Forest rangers, lumberjacks, townsfolk, and hunters have a treasure trove of enticing tales at their fingertips. Some may seem exaggerated, yet what truly captures interest is the casualness with which the narrators discuss the events. It was the heart of winter, and the ice was tough and unyielding. It was often challenging to bore a hole for ice fishing with a hand auger on the first try. Yegorik, a stalwart of winter fishing, knew the river's ice thickness like the back of his hand. He was a well-built peasant who had lived his entire life as a single man, never married, never had children, and never kept a pet. He claimed it was too expensive to feed even a dog, and he didn't own a cat either. Around the town, people referred to him as Gorenish, but only behind his back. He eventually caught wind of this, but didn't appear bothered. Word had it that he even took a liking to the name. His hamlet, which lacked a store, was minuscule and remote from the nearest one. A truck delivering essential goods visited weekly, with the driver doubling as the vendor. One day, the usual driver left, and the new one brought a broader variety of goods, although at a small increase in sugar price, 5 rubles per kilogram. In these rural areas, no one ever bought more than 200 grams to half a kilogram. Villagers usually stocked up on staples like grains, salt, pasta, and sugar. Recognizing this, Gorenik decided to purchase 10 kilograms of sugar, reasoning it was time to prepare for summer, when ripe berries would offer the chance to make jam. Yegorich had a penchant for sweets. While waiting for his turn, he calculated that this venture would cost him an extra 50 rubles. Understandably, he was crestfallen. To make matters worse, local gossipy elderly ladies whispered that the store across the river still sold sugar at its original price. This revelation prompted Yegorich to abandon his purchase and opt instead to traverse the river on foot to the neighboring village. He scheduled this expedition for the next day. However, that night, sleep eluded him as he rummaged through his thoughts. What if someone else had already bought all the sugar at the old rate? Determined, Yegorich resolved to arrive early when the store opened. He rose before dawn, fired up the stove to avoid returning to a chilly home, and slipped into his felt boots with rubber overshoes. As he neared the river in the pre-dawn half-light, he noticed someone struggling near a hole in the ice meant for washing clothes. Curious, he approached and shouted, "Hey, who's over there?" The struggle intensified, but there was no response. Yegorich, despite his waning eyesight, didn't care to invest in spectacles. His oft-quoted phrase was, "I won't carry a spoon beyond my reach." Drawing closer, he realized it was a bear causing the commotion. He felt frightened, but also compelled to help. After all, it was a sentient being in danger. Yet, bears should be hibernating in winter, not wandering around rivers. He contemplated whether this was his concern. As he inched nearer, crouching to avoid the danger of shattering ice, he saw the elongated face of an elk protruding from the hole. The animal's forelegs rested on the ice, but its large body remained trapped in the water, sodden with weight. A dilemma arose. Abandoning the creature would nag at his conscience, yet the sugar deal still loomed. Yegorich chose to stay, observing as the elk closed its eyes, relenting. Suddenly, a thought sparked in his mind, and he rushed back home to fetch 2 axes, fortunate that the river was close. He sprinted back, finding the animal still there, no longer resisting. If someone had spotted him intensely working with the axes, they would surely have wondered about his sudden strength. With determination, Yegorich began to hack a corridor in the ice toward the shore, as if saving a treasured family member. Uncommon sentiments stirred within him, empathy for the creature, and a desire to leave a noteworthy impression in people's minds for his twilight years. Consumed by these thoughts, he dedicated himself to the task and swiftly succeeded in clearing a path. Now, they needed a way to rescue the elk. He didn't have time to return home for a rope and had left his tulip behind. not having considered the need for it initially. Luckily, he had brought 2 axes, or else his labor would have doubled. Coming closer to the river, he resolved to use both hands. In no time, he fashioned a moose skin into a makeshift collar and led the animal toward the cleared route. The elk no longer resisted and followed him. Its weight forced Yegorich to pour all his strength into each pull, causing him to break into a sweat. When the animal exhibited signs of panic in the narrow passage, he understood he needed to soothe it. He placed his hand on the elk's forehead, giving it a gentle stroke, noticing its icy coldness. Time was of the essence. Suddenly, Yegorich felt the load lighten as the elk attempted to stand. Its spirit seemed renewed, and with every step, it emerged more from the river. Eventually, Yegorich guided it to the shore, expecting the animal to disappear into the wilderness. However, the creature collapsed and appeared lifeless. Yegorich's heart sank, fearing his efforts were in vain, but then he saw faint vapor emerging from its nostrils. He pressed his ear against the wet fur, straining to detect a heartbeat, but heard nothing. Quickly, he took off his coat and draped it over the elk to safeguard its heart and lungs. He dashed back home for his large sleds used for transporting firewood. Gorenish resolved to persist for his newfound charge. He zipped through the village, clad only in a sweater, greeting fellow villagers. "Hey, Yegorich, running around half-dressed? Have you started a new fitness regime?" A neighbor jested. "Instead of jesting, get your coat, Sansanik, and come with me to the river. We need to save someone," Yegorich instructed. The neighbor stood up immediately, sensing something was amiss. Villagers can be quickly rallied with minimal persuasion, especially when excitement is at stake. As Yegorich donned his sheepskin coat and pulled Sansanich out the door, the neighbor's wife and son joined them. Whispers and raised eyebrows circulated about the identity of the creature in peril. On their run to the river, they were joined by 2 more individuals. The elk lay still, but Yegorich noticed its sides heaving. It was alive. They hauled it onto the sled, working together, 2 at the front and 2 at the rear. The neighbor's wife exclaimed in pain, claiming the elk's belly was too bloated. "Keep quiet, woman. Maybe it ingested some water," Sansanich yelled. They swaddled the elk in fur coats and transported it back to the village. As they arrived, a crowd had gathered, news traveling fast in these parts. A logjam ensued over where to place the elk. Some suggested the shed, but others disagreed, arguing it needed warmth. "Well," Yegorich shrugged, "I have space. Let's bring it into my house." Laughter erupted at the suggestion. "Yegorich, you're something. Bringing a moose into your home," someone remarked. They moved the elk into the warm house, positioning it by the stove. For an extended period, Yegorich cared for the animal, providing warmth and water until it managed to stand. He even brought in a local vet, setting aside costs. The vet revealed that it was not a male elk, but a female, leading Yegorich to become a surrogate father. Shortly after, the once lone man witnessed an exceptional event. The elk gave birth to twins. Yegorich found immense joy in caring for them, and by fall, he had established a moose farm. No one referred to him as Gorenick anymore. A new alias took hold, Moose Dad. In that year, Yegorich never did acquire sugar. It's an inspiring tale. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Don't forget to hit the subscribe and like buttons and tap on the bell icon so you won't miss upcoming videos. Stay safe!